Welcome to the Love Intervention. I'm Pastor Evans.
I'm Mrs. Evans.
The Love Intervention, if you haven't been with us before, is a Christian perspective on dating, courtship, and marriage. Marriage. So, guess what? Neither my wife nor myself are actual couples therapists. Don't tell tell everybody. But we've been married for almost 20 years.
This December.
And we've had several conversations with different folks in different type of relationship statuses. So we bring those tips and snips to you. Today, we're talking about what it really means to be single.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Now, here's a disclaimer. I just told you we've been married for almost 20 years. I don't know if we really remember what singleness feels like. But it's actually a more simple topic than most people make it. Ridiculous. It's actually a much simpler topic than most people make it out to be. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it so more folks can get this good information that you're getting right now.
Please.
Getting into singleness today, let's go.
So, as always, as I was reading my weekly articles, I came across a quote that I wanted to share from Crosswalk. The article is entitled 10 Things You Should Know. And the article was talking about a lot of things that Christian young adults should know about different areas of your life. And here's the quote. But God made you and me for far more than marriage, business, or whatever else we each might choose for ourselves. If we miss this, we risk wasting our lives running in wrong directions, pursuing pitiful dreams, and serving tiny gods. And the reason why I wanted to share that with us today is because whether you're single or you're married or you're in a relationship, we shouldn't be so concerned about what our relational status is. What we really should be considering and thinking about is where we are in our lives and where God has taken us and where we want to go. And so I thought that was a good article for this episode because it's important for us to acknowledge what our relational status is. But it's even more important for us to be pursuing those things that God is calling us to.
Well, that's good. I like it a lot. Very good. So, the link to that article will be in the description. Did you want to say something?
No.
I'll cut you off?
You cut me a little bit.
Oh,
little bit. Go
My
ahead.
bad. So, with that in mind, I'm sure there's a question for the day.
Yes. So the question for today is, what do we believe about singleness and committed relationships? What do we believe?
What do we believe about singleness and committed relationships? I would love it if you would answer that question in the comments below, but I have a little bit of information that I want to share. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm good.
All right, good. So, we said at the beginning, what does it mean to be single? Now, I told you before, this may not be that long because it's pretty simple. Right? Some people make it complicated, but it's not all that complicated. What does it mean to be single? Single means that you're not married. Right. We can close now. That's all it is. Single means that you're not married. But people might say, what if I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? I am not single anymore because I am in a relationship. What if I'm in a monogamous relationship? Because some people have girlfriends and boyfriends and they're still diddling and daddling.
Right. Well, I looked up the definition
Oh, okay.
on definition.com.
Definition.com.
And it says singleness, which is a noun,
Right.
is the quality or state of being single or separate from all others. So it's the quality or state of being single or separated from all others, which is the opposite of being with others. Amen?
Right. Amen. All right.
It also said that it was the opposite of being complicated.
I don't know. I mean, I've met some complicated single people, though.
Well, I'm just telling you what it said.
Well, so singleness, unmarried, the opposite of being
Complicated.
right? But if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, are you still single?
Right. Are you still single?
If you are in a monogamous relationship, first of all, monogamous, does monogamous only mean, did you look up that? I don't know. Hey, you can answer this. Does monogamous only mean that you're only having sex with one person, or does that just mean that you're in a relationship with one person?
I don't know, but you know what my thoughts on that were? That a person is single regardless of their relational status. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Right.
You're together 20 years. If you're not married, guess what? You're single.
You've been single for 20 years.
Right.
Right.
We're doing this thing. Single.
Right.
20 years.
What if they're in a committed relationship, though? Does that make a difference?
Single. Amen.
So, some thoughts on singleness. Unless you're married, you're single. We've said that before.
Right.
So just some thoughts. We're going to go through some thoughts. Unless you're married, you're single. Much of what we believe about singleness or about relationships, we learn from our culture. And in one of our previous videos, when we were talking about sex, we said that we are inundated with our culture.
Right.
And it was called the pickling process. We sit in this culture and we think that because everybody around us believes, or it seems like everybody around us believes one thing or acts and moves in a particular way, that we feel like that's the truth.
Right.
Right? So because and to that end, we believe that if we're in a relationship with one other person, for however long we've been in that relationship, we feel like we're not single anymore, right? And then you do the major thing, and then you change your relationship status on social media, like in a relationship.
Right, but there's no phase between single and married.
Right.
In real life.
Oh, you just
like for real.
Right, for real. There's like single and married.
Right.
Right. But so other common thoughts on being single. People think that being in a relationship means they're not single anymore. That's what we were just talking about. Just because you're in some type of relationship does not mean that you're no longer single.
Right.
Because what changes your relationship or your marital status is, you guessed it, getting married. Right?
Right. Is that the only thing that changes it?
That is, was there something else? Wait a minute. Maybe
right.
when I'm in a committed relationship,
no,
that changes my marital status because I'm in a committed relationship. No? Okay. So what are some common mistakes about singleness?
Right.
And what are some common mistakes that single folks make? I think that's a fair way to put it. 1, single people do married stuff because they feel more connected than they actually are.
Or should be.
Right. Right? So we started out by saying, and we said it quite jokingly, hopefully we didn't hurt your feelings. I started out by saying that if you're not married, you're single. Right. But a lot of times, single folks do married stuff because they feel like they're more connected than they are. Like paying other people's bills.
Right.
Like
ironing other people's clothes.
Like
making sure that there's a hot meal.
Right. How about this one? Like listening and obeying someone else's directions.
Right.
Right? There's a little passage in the marital vows that says, love, honor, and obey your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there's no passage in the singleness vows that say you have to honor and obey your boyfriend.
Right. Wait, singleness vows?
Yes, there's no singleness vows.
Right.
Right. So, doing marriage stuff because you feel more connected than you are. Right? It's a mistake. We think, single folks think, that sex connects you and changes your relationship. Well, it does change your relationship.
Right. I was about to say, like,
Yeah, it does change your relationship, but it doesn't connect you eternally.
Right.
It doesn't connect you legally.
Right.
Sex is sex.
Right. It
Outside of
binds you in
marriage.
a way that's going to affect your possible marital relationship.
Yes, it will affect your future marital relationship.
Right.
And there's another video that we did about that regarding sex. You can search for it, the Love Intervention Sex, and you can see that see that episode. But it doesn't. Sex in and of itself doesn't change the commitment level of your relationship
In the state of singleness.
and the state of singleness. You might feel more committed,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still single.
But I said in the state of singleness.
I don't understand what you mean. In the state of singleness.
While
Oh,
you're
okay.
in the state
While you're single.
Right.
Right. See, I don't get it all the time either. So the last common mistake that single people make is if you don't actually want to be single forever,
Mm-hmm.
then you're wasting time with people who do want to be single.
Right.
Right? So you find out what the person you're with, if you're with your boyfriend, you have a girlfriend, or your man, whatever you want to call them, and you know that they don't want to, they're not looking towards being or getting married,
Right.
you're wasting your time.
Right.
Right? You're not going to change their mind necessarily about where they want to be and where they want to go. You want to be something else, so don't waste your time.
Right. And also, I know you said that was the last one.
Yeah, go ahead.
But it doesn't inspire someone to call them wifey or hubby. It doesn't
Right.
inspire them in a way if they
Right.
don't want to be married.
Right.
It won't inspire them in a way towards marriage.
Right.
By changing or giving them cute little nicknames
Right.
that they
don't-
haven't deserved.
Right.
Or they haven't earned.
You earn it. Right.
Don't do that.
Don't do that one. All right. So, wife, you think there's a difference between being single and being in a committed relationship then? You know? I mean, of course you know. We already went over this stuff.
No.
No.
There isn't.
So-
I'm sorry.
Right. So, a committed relationship is really just being single, and you feel like you're more serious about it. Is it fair to say that? Like you're really, really involved with one person, but you're still single.
Yes.
Is
That's
that
fair.
fair?
That's fair. And unfortunately, in these committed relationships, we're committed to going nowhere sometimes.
That's a good point.
Right? Because a good number of the time, you break up and then you're committed to someone else.
Right. And then you spent like 5 years
Right.
thinking that it was going someplace, and it was not. Just like we finished talking about, you wasted. Why waste the time?
Right.
Right? So, thoughts on commitment, right? And what that means.
Well, when I
Go ahead.
was reading a couple of articles online, it's really a resource, not necessarily an article.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading the position or the perspective that maybe other churches have,
Okay.
or other people of fellowship have of the Christian faith. And so I came across La Vista Church of Christ, Christians who believe in sex before marriage, if in a committed relationship.
Okay.
And I just thought it was an interesting article.
Okay.
And they say the problem is that you don't get to make the rules. Right? A committed relationship means you have entered into a marriage covenant, not that you are monogamous in who you have sex with.
Right.
God didn't institute marriage and say, "Oh, but you get to change the rules."
Right.
Even if you're in a monogamous relationship.
Right.
Commitment means covenant entering.
Right.
Right.
Good. That's good. And that leads us into a couple of these other points. But I think what's important to note there is to remember that we said before, listen, the love intervention comes with all this information from a Christian perspective.
Right.
We believe, and we hope that at some point you believe, that marriage is something that God instituted and God created.
Right.
And if he instituted it and created it, then he sets the rules. And those rules are, the only real commitment is marriage.
Right.
That is the commitment.
Right.
Everything else is a choice.
Right.
Until you're married, your commitment to the person that you're with is a choice. And that is a choice that can be made today and not made tomorrow.
Right.
Because there's nothing binding you together. Marriage makes it a covenant.
Right.
Right? And I gave you that, and my wife and me just gave you that real churchy word, covenant. But it really just means an agreement between God and man with stipulations and promises.
Right.
And I looked that up to give to you guys, but it's a interesting term, and if you listen to the words, it's a stipulation between God and man with stipulations and promises, rules and rewards.
Right.
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 So the real commitment is marriage. So if you're single today, and if you've been in a relationship for however long,
years, yeah.
right, and for a long time, and you feel like, oh, we're really committed to each other, then you want to get married.
Right. Or at the very least, you want to reflect on your relationship and where you are.
Right. Right. Love Intervention 101. If you have a desire to be in a relationship with a person of the opposite sex, then you have a desire to be married.
Right.
Even if you think you don't. So, marriage is a commitment. Marriage is the thing that brings you the promises and rewards. So these so-called committed relationships seems to have a heightened level of respect in the singleness community, right? Because you're with one person and you're committed to that person, right? And so much so that people won't even, give you grief or scoff at the fact that maybe you're living together.
Right.
And now you're in a cohabitating relationship. So we talked earlier about there's no real state between single and married, right? But what people do, is we put this imaginary state between it. That cohabitation state. We'll talk about that in another episode. That cohabitation state between being single and married. Right. And people don't say anything about it because you'll see on movies and you'll hear other people say like, "Oh, we're gonna take our relationship to the next level." And I think, "Oh, you're getting married."
Right. I think there are times.
Right. Well, no. The next level is living together to make sure that you guys can live together.
Right.
Right. And here's the problem. You know what the problem is, wife? There's logic to it.
Right.
To live with somebody and figure out whether or not you can live together.
Right. It seems a little logical.
It seems really logical.
Right.
It's just not the plan.
Right. It's just not the plan.
It's not the best for you, right? But it makes logical sense. It doesn't make sense for you as a spiritual being.
Right.
So, what are some common mistakes that committed people make?
What are they?
Very similar to single people because you know why? They're the same people.
Right.
People in committed relationships do married stuff.
Right.
They do married stuff because they think their commitment is more than it is. Really?
Right.
It's really just being single at the same time together for real.
And when we say married stuff, people generally think sex. But we're not just talking about sex.
Right. It's not even just the sex because you were probably already having that. Am I wrong? You laughing at me. Am I wrong? No. So, committed people do marriage stuff because they think their commitment is as good as a marriage.
Right.
Right? and they feel like, oh, we're already married. We're calling each other hubby. This is my wife. This is my husband, and you're not nowhere near married.
Right.
And the second, and I think it's probably the most hurtful, is that we waste time lying to ourselves about the type of relationship that we're in.
Right.
And we feel like we're in this committed relationship, telling ourselves that this is more serious than it is. And then many times these committed relationships end. And then now we're in a state where we're maybe depressed,
right,
just completely broken because you've given your all to someone and they pulled away from you. Or you've given your all to someone and it just didn't work out.
Right. Now we find ourselves in a state of recovery.
Right. Now you have to, that's a good way to put it, wife. Now we have to recover from this relationship that was actually less than what we thought it was.
Right.
Because again, the commitment is marriage. The commitment that you want is covenant.
Right.
But your singleness is a blessing too. And I think we started by saying we have to understand, the quote at the beginning of the video is that you understand and take advantage of really the state that you're in right now.
Right.
Your singleness allows you to grow and flourish and figure out who you are.
Right.
If you're a person of faith like we are, it allows you to grow and flourish and figure out who God would have you to be. If you are not a person of faith, then you have an opportunity to grow and figure out what it is that you want to do without being bound to and have an obligation to answer to anyone else.
Right.
So what does it mean to be single? It means growing and learning.
Right.
Before you commit for real to someone else. Right?
Right.
All right. So,
what does God say?
right.
What does God say?
This section of the show, we go immediately and exclusively to what God says about these issues. And I try to give you scriptures that we believe that are relevant and give you an understanding about, somewhat of an understanding about how we think they apply. Mm-hmm. All right, so first one. Okay, we have Colossians 2, verses 6 through 8. Therefore, as you have received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, having been firmly rooted and now being built up in him and established in your faith, just as you were instructed, and overflowing with gratitude. See to it, here's the part, see to it that no one takes you captive through the philosophy and empty deception according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ.
Right. So see that you're not in the pickling process too long.
Right. Right. Listen, you guys got to watch the video on sex. That pickling process is extremely eye-opening, I think.
Right.
To figure out, to talking about how we see these things in our culture.
Right.
Right. So this verse 8 here says, see to it that no one takes you captive through vain ideas or vain philosophies. Like you don't actually have to live with someone to figure out if you can live with someone.
Right.
Because if you are committed to them and you say, I want to be your husband and you want to be my wife.
Why?
Right. Then you will work it out because the commitment, the covenant is what will carry you through.
Right.
Not you trying to figure it out. All right. Romans 12, 1. Therefore I urge you, my brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect.
Right.
So, present yourself a sacrifice to God. Listen, I told you we're coming at this from a Christian perspective, and we're not going to apologize for the fact that God says You are mine. Give you to me.
Right.
Right? And if you can do that, then you can understand what God truly has for you in this relationship process.
Right.
Right? And then he says here in verse 2, don't be conformed to this world. Don't let the world tell you that you have to do these things. Right? Don't let the world tell you that you have to give yourself to someone else in order for your relationship to grow. Right? Because that giving happens in marriage. The commitment happens in marriage. The covenant is what you want.
And if you truly give yourself to Christ, all those other things will fall in line.
Amen.
Right.
Right. So don't be conformed to the world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you can figure out what God's will is for you. That good and perfect will.
Right.
1 Corinthians, last one. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 7 says, I wish that all people were as I am, but each person having his own gift from God, one of this kind and one of that. Verse 8, but I say to the unmarried and to the widows, that is a practical matter. It is good if they remain single and entirely devoted to the Lord, as I am. But if they do not have sufficient self-control,
Right.
they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. All right. Now that's a rough one. But here's how we're going to say it, and it's a good one to close on, I think.
Right.
Right? Paul is saying here that it is good for you to be single because in your singleness, you can devote yourself completely to God. You don't have anyone to answer to. Right? Once you get married, the truth is once you get married, your commitment changes from it's God, wife, family.
Right.
Or God, husband, family.
Right.
But when you're single, your commitment is God.
Right.
Then everybody else. Right? So Paul is saying here is I wish that everyone could stay like I am currently and be single so that you can completely devote yourself to God. But if that's not the case,
Right.
if you see the women's
And you need the sex.
and you need the sex,
Right.
then you get the married.
Right.
Right? Because everything else, and we're saying it jokingly, but everything else is outside of what God would have for you. Everything else is outside of the best that he would have for you. Paul says here that if you cannot have sufficient self-control to wait and serve God only, then you are to be married.
Right.
So that you do not have to burn with passion. So you're not distracted and getting involved in things that you don't need to be involved in and fooling yourself into thinking that you're in a more committed relationship than you are.
And it's for your good.
Right.
Because all those married things outside of marriage are actually pretty difficult to handle, deal with, process.
Right.
Outside of the commitment of a covenant.
Right.
Right.
I think that's it. So, thank you for joining us on the Love Intervention today. Remember to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. And if you have not, I don't understand why you're not subscribed yet. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And then don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you can see when our next episode is released.
Right. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.